The courtroom was charged, nearly oppressively so. Christine Brown entered slowly, her stiletto heels clicking against the marble floor, every step ringing out like a drumbeat in the quiet room. She clutched her folder to her chest, the documents inside a lifeline of proof she had spent weeks gathering. Her eyes scanned the room, the judge seated at the bench, reporters with cameras and notepads, and the figure who had dominated her life for decades, Kody Brown. He sat rigidly, jaw tight, hands clenched into fists on the table before him. Behind him, Robyn watched quietly, her face a mask of composure that barely concealed her anxiety. The air was heavy, with a subtle smell of wood polish and anxious expectancy. Christine took a slow breath, telling herself to breathe calmly. This wasn't a courtroom. This was the place where years of secrets, betrayals, and concealed truths would be brought to light. A surge of resolve came over her. Today she wasn't merely Christine Brown, Kody's wife. She was a mother, a woman who sought justice, and a voice for all the lies that had ever been spoken in order to conceal pain. The judge tapped his gavel. This court will come to order. Christine's attorney, Andrea, rose and addressed the room in a calm but commanding voice. Your Honor, today we introduce the evidence of years of deceit, patterns of manipulation, and violations of trust that have resulted in irreparable emotional damage to my client and her children. Kody's attorney, Charles, stood up sharply. Objection! This is a gross exaggeration. My client has done nothing illegal and has always acted in what he thought was the family's best interest. Andrea's gaze locked with Kody's, calm and resolute. Your Honor, the facts will speak for themselves, and they will reveal a pattern, intentional, consistent, and severely harmful. Andrea summoned the first witness, a financial analyst by the name of Mr. Harris, who had carefully examined decades of the family's records. He entered the stand with a pile of reports, his expression grave. Mr. Harris, Andrea started, describe to the court what you uncovered in your examination. He corrected his glasses. During a span of 3 years, money from the joint family accounts was deposited into an account in Robyn Brown's name as a business account. This money was large, in excess of $420,000, and was never shared with the rest of the family members. A whisper spread through the courtroom. Robyn's mouth opened slightly, a look of shock crossing her face, but it was swiftly replaced by a composed smile. Christine's eyes narrowed. This was proof of what she had always suspected. Andrea asked again. Can you verify who signed off on these transfers? Harris displayed a report for all to read. All transfers were signed off electronically by Kody Brown. Kody's jaw clenched. I didn't mean for this to hurt anyone, he grumbled under his breath. Andrea's voice changed, softening to a near sympathetic tone. Intentions or not, Mr. Brown, actions do have consequences. You vowed equality to your wives, and yet proof proves that one was favored while the others were kept in the dark. Christine's voice took on a slightly higher pitch, hard with feeling. You didn't shield anyone, Kody. You only shielded yourself. The judge slammed his gavel. Mrs. Brown, sit back down. The courtroom was tense with unspoken words and tension built over decades. Even the journalists could tell that they were witnessing something serious. The witness accounts had started pulling back the layers of a family long seen as one on TV, revealing the cracks beneath. Then Mary Brown was called to testify. The room grew even quieter. She wavered, and then she walked forward, hands firmly clasped together in front of her, looking at Kody. It was apparent that painful scars were opening. Mrs. Brown, Andrea spoke softly. We know this will be hard. Tell us what you know about the money transfers and the communications about them. Mary swallowed hard. I recall the day Christine left. Kody informed me she was unstable, that she didn't comprehend the finances, and that I should leave everything up to him. I didn't argue with it at the time, but a week later I discovered papers revealing great amounts transferred into Robyn's accounts. I questioned Kody about it, and he told me it was for the protection of the family. Christine's hands trembled slightly. She remembered that moment vividly. Kody's defense, the stories he spun, the assurances that were never true. It all came back with the force of years of betrayal. Kody stood abruptly, voice tight and defensive. "That's not how it happened. You're all twisting the truth." The judge slammed the gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Brown. Court will continue," Mary went on, her own voice more stable. "I didn't want to lie, but I was scared. Scared that if I questioned him, I'd be the villain. And in a sense, I was already relegated to the side." Robyn jumped to her feet. Her voice sliced through tension like glass. "Stop, you're making this worse than it was. Kody never meant to hurt anyone. He's done so much for this family." Christine regarded her, steady but stern. "Robyn, faking that everything was all right didn't help any of us. It just hurt more." Robyn's face dropped, her voice breaking. "I thought I was keeping us safe." Andrea permitted a silence, allowing the force of their words to register. This was not just a courtroom showdown. It was an emotional settling of scores that could not be filmed, one that had been decades in the brewing. As morning session came to an end, Christine took her seat again, still trembling a little by the hands. The burden of watching her family's secrets spill out in public was almost too much to bear, but it was also freeing. For the first time in years, she had the strength of her voice. Kody leaned into his chair, his face pale. The confidence armor he had worn so long had chipped. He looked at Robyn, then at Christine, finally realizing the consequences. The judge called a recess. The room emptied slowly, whispers filling the spaces as reporters scrambled for details, capturing every fleeting expression, every tense movement. Christine stepped outside, taking in a deep breath. The courthouse steps felt impossibly high, a physical reminder of the emotional climb she had undertaken. Janelle appeared beside her, offering quiet support. "You're doing the right thing," Janelle said softly. Christine agreed. "I simply want the truth to emerge. Not revenge, simply truth." Inside, Kody and Robyn stayed, the burden of the testimony bearing down. Robyn reached for Kody's hand at last, but he didn't react, his mind elsewhere. The first session had been the beginning. The evidence was evident, the witnesses were heard, and the emotional charge was in the air. Christine had found her voice again. Kody had been presented with irrefutable repercussions. And Robyn was starting to understand that loyalty could no longer disguise betrayal. And as the doors swung shut on the departing throng, the stillness descended on the courtroom like a lead blanket. Christine sat frozen in her seat for an eternity, her thoughts whirling, her heart thudding. The next day would bring the next hearing. More disclosure, more charged confrontations, more surprises. But Christine felt prepared. For the first time in years, she felt that she had an even break. The second day of the trial dawned beneath a sky blanketed with gray clouds. The courthouse appeared to be smaller today, the weight of yesterday's disclosures bearing down on every brick and marble column. Christine was at the courthouse early, her expression serene but her eyes piercing. She had spent hours reviewing her notes last night, committing details to memory, rehearsing questions and practicing control. Each step she took towards the courtroom seemed purposeful, as if each ring of her heels on the marble floor would confirm her resolve. Within, the room hummed with tension. Kody Brown held his seat at the defense table, his face firm and unyielding, but the creases etched into his eyes spoke of sleepless nights and insidious fear. Robyn huddled beside him, shoulders rounded, her fingers clenched tightly together in her lap. Across the room, Janelle and Mary locked brief glances, walls silently shifting, unstated verdicts suspended in the air. The judge came in, and everyone stood up. The gavel pounded down with authority. Court is now in session. Andrea, Christine's attorney, approached. "Your Honor, today we will present testimony that illuminates the emotional manipulations that have been a part of this family situation for decades. This is not merely about money. It is about trust, loyalty, and the ramifications of lying." Kody's attorney protested at once. "Objection! Emotional appeals are not evidence. The court must stay on facts." Andrea's gaze fastened on Kody. "Facts, Your Honor, are precisely what we are offering, but facts also have weight when they come intertwined, with emotional impact. Because this case is as much about the lives damaged as the money hidden." The first witness of the day was a family therapist who had counseled the Browns for over a decade. Dr. Angela Martinez approached the stand, her presence commanding respect. She carried no papers, only a calm, unwavering demeanor. "Dr. Martinez," Andrea started softly, "tell us about your interactions with the family over the years." Dr. Martinez breathed slowly. "I have witnessed this family in their best moments of love and worst moments of conflict. The patterns I saw are favoritism, secretive attitudes, and emotional manipulation, especially when it comes to money." The room fell silent. Even Kody's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Andrea continued, "Can you provide specific instances of how these behaviors impacted Christine and the other wives?" Dr. Martinez nodded. "Yes. Christine frequently said she felt invisible in family matters, even though she took the most responsibility for running the household. Kody would assure her, then act without informing her, especially where money and property were concerned. This stress produced tremendous anxiety for Christine and made her question her own value within the family unit. Christine's fists were balled in her lap. She recalled the late evenings, the tears that had fallen in silence, the hushed quarrels, the sense of being belittled as if she had never done anything of worth. Then, the court addressed Robyn Brown, who came to the witness stand with uncertain movements. She took her oath to tell the truth, speaking softly but clearly. Andrea's voice changed slightly, soothing but inquiring. "Robyn, you've known Kody for years. Did you ever see things done that you thought were unjust to Christine or the other wives?" Robyn swallowed hard. "Yes, I did. Sometimes I saw money transferred for no reason. I didn't ask because I didn't want to stir up trouble." Her voice caught and she hesitated. The courtroom leaned in, all eyes on her. "What did you feel during those times?" Andrea asked, conflicted, guilty and scared. "I loved Kody, and I thought staying quiet was protecting everyone. But now I realize it only made things worse." Christine's eyes relaxed a little, but her determination did not yield. She had waited so many years for validation of what had been going on behind closed doors. Kody's defense attorney rose, voice unflinching. "Mrs. Brown, are you stating Mr. Brown coerced you into silence?" "No," Robyn replied, her voice stronger now. "I made the decision, but it was a decision made in fear and uncertainty, under his manipulation." Andrea leaned forward a bit. "Did you ever stand up to him?" Robyn shook her head. "I tried once, but he persuaded me it was for the good of the family. I thought I was helping. I realize now that I was part of the problem." The judge nodded, taking notes. "This evidence is noted. Please return to your seat." The room released its collective breath as Robyn sat back down. Kody sat stiff, jaw clamped, eyes shooting back and forth between his attorney and the witness stand. For the first time, his cracks in demeanor were apparent to all. Andrea summoned Christine to the witness stand next. She walked with deliberate strides, face serene, heart racing. She touched the Bible with her hand, seriousness underscoring the oath, and started telling her story with the family. The nods of dismissal, the secret money, the emotional abandonment that had been made so normal over the years. "I gave my life to this family," she asserted, voice firm but shaking. "I ran households, children, and infinite tasks, and I was always reassured that everything was okay until I found out otherwise." The courtroom was captivated by her words. The details were there, the transfers, the secrecy, the favoritism. But more powerful were the feelings, the heartbreak, betrayal, and bravery. Andrea gave Christine a break. Next, gently but firmly, she inquired, "Christine, what do you hope to gain from this testimony?" Christine gazed straight ahead. Acknowledgement, honesty, and closure. Not revenge, not humiliation, just the truth. So my children and I can finally move forward without fear. With the morning session at a close, the courtroom was thick with emotion. Kody's face was ashen, Robyn's hands trembled ever so slightly, and Janelle and Mary traded subtle, knowing smiles. Christine sat back down, breathing slowly, a quiet sense of empowerment sweeping over her. The judge adjourned. Slowly, people emerged, reporters speaking softly, cameras snapping. Christine sat for an instant longer, allowing the gravity of the morning to wash over her. Outside, the day was still gray, but Christine felt something lift inside her chest. She had said her truth. The subsequent sessions would be more difficult. Confrontations, evidence, and the reckoning at last. But she was prepared. The opening hour of Session 2 had prepared the way for the most intense days to come. The emotional investment had been made, the witnesses had planted seeds for truth, and the people, both inside the courtroom and watching from home, could feel that the fight for justice was just starting. As Christine walked out for the break, she caught a glimpse of Kody, who shunned her eyes. For the first time, she understood something crucial. This wasn't only about winning a case. It was about taking back her life, her voice, and her dignity, win or lose. The third day of trial began with an almost tangible sense of weight. Outdoors, the courthouse steps sparkled from an early morning rain, its soft light reflected in the streetlight's gentle glow. Indoors, the room was already charged with expectation. Reporters shifted. Cameras flashed and onlookers murmured anxiously, as if their voices might break the silence that seemed to linger like a cloud over every pew. Christine went in first. Her face calm but her eyes sparkling with resolve. The past 2 days had been draining on her emotions, but she felt tighter than ever. She had studiously prepared for today's session, recognizing it would show the most fundamental cracks in the Brown family unit. Kody, on the other hand, came in with a guarded look on his face, though the hint of creases showing concern undermined his well-guarded demeanor. Robyn trailed behind, her complexion sickly, and her hands clasping her purse, as if the burden of the trial was upon her very chest. The judge settled into place, and the gavel came down, demanding silence. "Court will come to order," Andrea stood, moving purposefully. "Your Honor, today we will be providing testimony and evidence that specifically tackles the emotional ramifications of lying in this household, and how far-reaching the choices made by Mr. Brown have been in damaging not just Christine, but their children as well." Kody's attorney objected at once. "Objection, Your Honor. Emotional testimony must not predispose the court. We respectfully request the facts alone be taken into account." Andrea's eyes scanned Kody, level but unyielding. "Facts, yes, but facts are never separated from their human effect, and the human effect in this case is undeniable." The first witness to take the stand on that morning was Kody, Christine's oldest daughter. She moved forward, her stance rigid but her gaze fierce. She had watched her family fight silently for years, seen the deceptions and lies that had underpinned their lives. "Please repeat your name for the record," Andrea asked. "My name is Kody Brown," she answered, her voice firm. Andrea nodded. "Kody, what did you witness as a child within this family?" Kody took a deep breath. "I witnessed favoritism, secret finances, and broken promises. I watched my mother bear the load of the family on her shoulders, while my father secretly made decisions that impacted all of us." The courtroom fell silent. Even Kody shifted in his seat, a small furrow forming between his brows. Andrea went on. "Did you ever feel that your father's behavior hurt people?" "Yes," Kody declared stoutly. "It wasn't about the money. It was the sense that trust was not something that could be found in our household, that loyalty was always conditional. My mother fought for acceptance, and we, all us kids, felt the backlash." Christine's fists bunched. She could recall those years, the hushed arguments, the dread of angering her husband, the dry, silent tears at night. Then the court summoned a forensic accountant, Mr. Daniel Morris, who had been subpoenaed to review the financial records of the Brown family. He took his place, his expression professional but stern. "Mr. Morris," Andrea started, "tell me what you found when you went through the Brown family accounts." Morris put on his glasses. There were repeated transfers of large amounts over a period of several years from accounts that were available to Christine and other wives into accounts held by Mr. Brown and Robyn. These transfers were not recorded or revealed to the impacted family members. Kody's face set, his fingers wrapped around the edge of the table. Robyn turned away, her jaw clenched. Christine experienced a feeling of vindication, though one watered by the bitter shame of betrayal. Andrea pushed on. "Did you try to explain these transactions to Mr. Brown?" "Yes," Morris answered. I complained. But he said the transfers were only temporary, and in the best interest of the family as a whole. Then when I was questioned more, he released me from services. Kody's attorney stood up hastily. "Mr. Morris, do you know that your actions could be interpreted as being disloyal to your client?" Morris's stare was unblinking. "I do know, but disloyalty does not include standing on truth and justice, especially where there is a continuation of deception." Andrea faced Christine. "Would you care to speak, Christine?" Christine rose, speaking softly but passionately. "I trusted my family. I trusted my husband. And I was misled, not only financially but emotionally. For decades, my devotion was assumed, and my children and I paid the price for secrets." Kody's eyes widened slightly, his lips opening as if to answer, then not. His attorney leaned in and whispered something to him, and he slumped back into his chair, contained but clearly shaken. Andrea next presented video testimony, domestic recordings and clips of family gatherings filmed over the years. On the screen, Kody was seen quietly explaining money matters to one wife, while brushing off inquiries from Christine or other wives. The disparity in tone, focus, and body language was unmistakable. Christine stood by as the video ran, with a sense of relief and sadness. Relief that the truth was out in front of everyone, and sadness at the years lost to manipulation and lies. Robyn also observed, though her look was complicated, a combination of loyalty, shame, and fear. Janelle and Mary looked at each other, the silent understanding of like experiences. Andrea summed up the evidence. "Your Honor, the video evidently shows patterns of favoritism, secrecy, and emotional manipulation. These behaviors have real-world effects on Christine and the children, not just as monetary issues, but as emotional damage inflicted over a period of time." The courtroom murmured softly. Even the judge's brow creased in slight disapproval as he read over the documents and regarded the video testimony. As morning subsided toward noon, Andrea permitted Christine to leave the witness stand. Christine crossed to her seat, her shoulders set and her heart thumping. She had spoken her truth, exposed the wounds of decades, and yet she felt strengthened, more determined than ever. Outside, the rain had ceased, puddling off reflective mirrors of the courthouse's stern columns. Christine emerged for an instant, drawing a deep breath. She was aware that the coming sessions would probe even more into the secrets of the family. Angry confrontations, unbelievable disclosures, and sobs awaited. But she was ready. Janelle came up to her quietly. "You're doing what you have to do," she murmured. "And you're not alone." Christine nodded, with a sense of solidarity that was uncommon for her. It's time they all realized the repercussions of their actions, not only for me, but for all of us. Inside, Kody sat in silence, stare locked on the table. Robyn reached over to take his hand once more, but he was too far away. His mind was racing. The incessant exposure of his deeds, the emotional accounts, the accumulating proof. For the first time, control appeared to be eluding his grasp. A recess was called by the judge. Cameras snapped as the courtroom emptied and murmurs filled the corridors. Christine stayed put, psyching herself up for what lay in store. She had endured 2 rounds of fiery confrontation, and yet the most intense disclosures were yet to come. As she left the doors closing behind her, there was a feeling of subdued expectation. She understood the next class would test her courage, expose her to more appalling realities, and require bravery she didn't even know she still had. But for the moment, she granted herself a respite, having taken another step closer to justice and freedom. The 4th trial day dawned under a somber gray morning sky, the kind that bore down on the courthouse like the weight of unspoken reality. Christine was there early, walking with a quiet confidence that camouflaged the knot of nerves in her gut. Today was going to be one of the most emotionally charged yet. The day when long-dug-up secrets and face-offs would escalate to an all-time high. She held her folder closely, the documents within symbolizing not only proof, but her decades-long survival. Kody came in behind her, shoulders braced, face deliberately expressionless. But the pale lines etched around his eyes told of sleepless nights and growing worry. Robyn trailed behind, pale face grimly set, lips pursed in a tight line. On the other side of the courtroom, Janelle and Mary sat, trading nervous, furtive glances, the unspoken recognition of shared suffering reflected in their faces. The judge came in and sat, the gavel slamming hard to call the room to order. "Court will come to order," he ordered. Andrea rose, her stance quiet but firm. "Your Honor, today we will address personal encounters, testimony of emotional abuse, and the effect of decades of lies. We will observe how these habits impacted not just Christine but the family unit as well." Kody's lawyer stood immediately, voice defensive. "Objection. Emotional appeals must not prejudice this court. We ask that evidence be the sole focus." Andrea's eyes roved the courtroom, steady and unwavering. Emotions and facts are entangled here, and the human reality can't be denied. The first witness was Christine herself. She stepped up to the stand, shoulders squared, eyes sweeping the courtroom. The courtroom was held in silent breath as she was sworn in. Her voice, steady but for an undercurrent of emotion, rang out throughout the room. "I led a life of commitment, compassion, and devotion to my family," Christine started. "I trusted my husband for decades, I raised the children, and I sacrificed everything to keep the balance of our family going. I found that trust was being eroded, secretly, in my face, behind closed doors." Kody shifted uncomfortably, jaw clenched, as Robyn's fists curled around her purse. Christine's words rang in the room, off the gleaming wood and marble surfaces. Andrea urged Christine to go on. "Please tell us how these actions impacted you personally." Christine's voice trembled slightly, but she held steady. "I felt invisible, unheard, and betrayed. Each secret, each omission, each lie eroded my sense of self-worth. I was afraid to challenge choices, nervous in my own house and uncertain if my input was ever appreciated." Next, Mary Brown was summoned onto the stand. Her steps were slow, yet she possessed a calm sureness. She had been quiet for far too long, being complicit in the environments where dishonesty could take root. And now the urgings of her conscience compelled her to voice what she knew. Andrea's tone was softening slightly, questioning, but encouraging. "Mary, tell us about your take on the family dynamics throughout the years. Did you see things that hurt Christine or other family members?" Mary's voice shook at first. "Yes, I did. I saw favoritism, decisions made without openness, and instances where Christine was belittled. I kept quiet because I was afraid of conflict, afraid of disturbing the family unit, and quite frankly, afraid of Kody's response." Christine's hands were folded in her lap, fists. The courtroom was still, every word Mary uttered cutting through the air like a knife. Andrea leaned forward a little. "Do you think your silence added to Christine's distress?" Mary hesitated, her voice low and firm. "Yes. I realize now that not speaking out enabled the imbalance to be perpetuated. I was trying to protect the family, but actually, I was trying to protect myself." The court shifted its attention to Robyn, who approached the witness box with evident fear. Her mouth was pursed tightly, her fingers clutching the sides of the witness box. Andrea spoke softly, but firmly. "Robyn, can you explain to the court your role in making decisions in the family, especially regarding money issues and communication with Christine?" Robyn took a deep breath, eyes flashing at Kody before going back to the judge. I didn't think I was causing harm. I trusted Kody to do what was right. But in hindsight, I understand that my compliance created secrecy, and that secrecy harmed Christine and our children. I didn't mean to harm anyone, but my silence helped cause harm." Kody went white and looked away, not wanting to look at Christine. Christine's face remained firm, but her eyes showed years of heartache long overdue for recognition. Andrea stepped forward to deliver taped communications, emails, text messages, and notes that showed patterns of favoritism, emotional manipulation, and condescending behavior. The tapes were heard in court. Kody's voice level, sounding almost soothing, as he dismissed Christine's questions or minimized inquiries regarding money transparency. Every clip showed control, secrecy, and subtle manipulation, a pattern unseen by passers-by, but excruciatingly obvious in retrospect. Christine leaned forward marginally as each tape was played, her jaw clenched. This was her vindication. The lies, the dismissals, the emotional toll she bore for decades, all exposed for the world to see. Robyn's shoulders slumped, guilt dancing in her eyes. Janelle and Mary looked at each other. Wordless solidarity, and quiet confirmation of Christine's account. Kody's defense lawyer tried to interject, suggesting the recordings were invalid, taken out of context. Andrea refuted with accuracy, citing dates, content, and supporting witness testimony. The judge listened attentively, sometimes making notes, the courtroom otherwise quiet except for the clear voices of the attorneys. Christine, sitting now, permitted herself a moment to catch her breath. The emotional depth of the session was exhausting, but needed. She felt strong, the reality of decades at last emerging. The day's session ended with Christine reading a closing statement into the record. "I do not seek revenge," she told her words, steady but affected. "I seek acknowledgement, honesty, and closure. My children and I deserve to see that our lives, our efforts, and our trust have meaning. That acknowledgement starts today." The judge adjourned, and the room emptied slowly. News reporters whispered to each other, the flash of cameras. Christine stepped out into the cool wind, which brushed against her face. The tension of the session still hung around her, but so did a sense of growing relief. She had testified to the truth, confronted her family, and triggered a reckoning that could no longer be put off. Janelle accompanied her, a silent hand on her shoulder. "You've done what you needed to do," she said gently. "Whatever happens now, this was your time to take back your voice." Christine nodded, absorbing the words. "It's just the beginning," she said, "but I feel like I'm finally moving forward now." Within, Kody sat still, his hands tightly clasped, downcast eyes. Robyn lingered in the background, unsure what to do, torn by loyalty, guilt, and the irrefutable reality exposed in court. Christine was aware the subsequent sessions would prod further. More confrontations, more distasteful revelations, and the emotional culmination ahead. Yet she felt ready. She had testified to her truth, seen corroboration, and set the stage for the ultimate reckoning. The courthouse gradually emptied out, the reverberations of the day resonating. Christine stood at the stairs, inhaling deeply. She was no longer merely a player in the trial. She was taking back her story, step by step, word by word. The 5th day of the trial was ushered in quietly, the courtroom thick with expectation. Christine was there early, moving with measured tread, each ring of her heels a deliberate pulse against the glinting marble floor. She was armed with a folder of precision-printed notes, proof, and photographs, all carefully compiled to reveal decades of pretense and treachery. Today, she was certain, would be the most hectic and charged session so far. Kody came in after her, his expression neutral, but the strain in his shoulders gave away weeks of sleepless nights and growing tension. Robyn trailed behind, her hands clenched together, lips compressed, as if attempting to maintain her equilibrium in a room poised on the brink of eruption with emotion. Janelle and Mary sat down in silence, sharing discreet looks. The silent knowledge between them weighed with decades of accumulated experience and suffering. The judge sat down, and the gavel came down with a sharp crack. "Court will come to order," he declared, his voice imparting the seriousness of the session ahead. Andrea rose, gliding forward with quiet authority. "Your Honor, today's session will be dedicated to the personal accounts of family members, emphasizing emotional impact, psychological distress, and the effects of long-term deception. We will look at the human toll of secrecy in this family." Kody's attorney objected at once. "Objection, Your Honor. Appeal to emotion must not be the basis of the court's decision. We ask that evidence be the major emphasis." Andrea's eyes scanned the room, unblinking. Facts are meaningless without context. The human experience tied to these actions cannot be denied. The morning's first witness was Christine's middle daughter, Savannah. She moved onto the stand with cautious steps, eyes darting nervously in the direction of Kody. Her hands were clenched tightly in front of her, knuckles white. She had grown up witnessing the tension, backroom financial dealings, and emotional manipulation that had characterized her family. "Please pronounce your name for the record," Andrea instructed. "Savannah Brown," she said, voice shaking but firm. Andrea nodded respectfully. "Savannah, can you tell us how your father's actions affected you and your siblings?" Savannah gulped hard. "We felt insecure, bewildered, and sometimes helpless growing up. We saw our mother, Christine, fighting to keep the family intact as Dad made secret decisions that impacted us all. We didn't know why she always looked stressed or angry, but we now realize that she was carrying the load of truth while Dad used promises and intimidation to hide behind. Cody's jaw clenched. Robyn's shoulders slumped a little, shame crossing her face. Christine's heart was a mixture of sadness and vindication. Her children's voices at last were confirmed, substantiating years of struggle and anguish. Andrea next recalled Christine to the stand to give more extensive testimony. Christine walked over, her shoulders straight, hands lightly on the rim of the witness box. Her gaze swept the courtroom, observing the faces of her family, attorneys, and the judge. I spent years taking care of my children, running homes, balancing budgets, and keeping peace, said Christine in a serene voice heavy with emotion. And along the way, I was lied to. I was kept in the dark as decisions that impacted all of us were made without me in the loop. The psychological damage has been tremendous, and my children have suffered right along with me. The courtroom hung on every word. Even Kody, who was used to being level-headed, seemed disturbed. His fingers tightened around the table edge as he heard Christine describe years of clandestine manipulations and broken trust. There was a moment of hesitation from Andrea before she went on. Christine, can you tell me about the times when you knew the true extent of the deception? Christine breathed deeply. When I first discovered evidence of unreported financial transactions, I felt betrayed, helpless, and infuriated. It wasn't about the money. It was about trust, respect, and honesty. With each passing year, each deceit, each withholding of information destroyed my belief in the family system. I felt alone, silenced, and unseen. Then the court summoned a family friend and advisor, Mr. Jameson, who had watched the Browns for decades. He approached the stand, his demeanor calm, yet his eyes carried the weight of witnessing unspoken struggles. Mr. Jameson, please describe your observations of the family dynamics over the years, Andrea asked. Jameson nodded. I witnessed Christine working hard, taking care of her children and the household. At the same time, Kody would make unilateral decisions, occasionally giving Robyn preferential treatment. The emotional toll it took on Christine was apparent. Anxiety, stress, and times of profound sorrow. Kody fidgeted in his chair. Robyn gazed downwards, her fingers shaking a little. Christine's expression did not waver, but her eyes betrayed a swirl of vindication and sadness. Andrea then presented further evidence, emails, text messages, and financial documents that highlighted the numerous unilateral actions by Kody and preferential treatment of Robyn. The facts were evident, carefully laid out, and supported by several witnesses. Christine permitted herself a pause to catch her breath, relishing the burden of truth being accepted at last. She had borne this quietly for years, and now the courtroom witnessed her strength. Robyn followed, summoned to testify about her participation in family decision-making. Her hands trembled a little as she walked to the stand. Robyn, Andrea started softly. Can you explain your perception of the financial choices and your part in them? Robyn took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. I thought I was assisting. I trusted Kody to do what was right, and I didn't want to speak up against him. But now I see how my silence kept the hurt going. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but what I did helped bring Christine pain. Kody's expression stiffened, and he looked away. Christine's was still one of calm determination, however, with an unshakable focus. Andrea next invited Christine to read one last piece of testimony from a personal journal, chronicling her own experiences. Her perceptions of betrayal, moments of fear and heartache. Reading the passages aloud, her tone firm but filled with open emotion. I believed my family. I believed my husband. And I was lied to, not only financially but emotionally. For years, my devotion was taken for granted, and my children and I paid the price for secrecy and decision-making. I am not about revenge. I want acknowledgement and honesty. The courtroom was hushed. Even the judge seemed affected by the words, making careful notes. Reporters were leaning forward, cameras clicking softly. Kody sat stiff, the evidence irrefutable, his composed mask beginning to slip. As the session ended, Christine returned to her seat, heart racing but firm. She had testified to her truth, supported by witnesses, and produced irrefutable proof. The effect was apparent on every face in the courtroom. Outside, the air was crisp and cool. Christine descended onto the courthouse steps, breathing deeply. The following sessions would be even more intense. More confrontation, revelations, and climaxes of emotion were on the horizon. But she felt a sense of empowerment and strength that had eluded her for so long. Janelle stood next to her, a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've done it all correctly," she whispered. "Today is your day, and you've gotten your voice back." Christine smiled, taking the words to heart. "This is just the start, but today, for the first time in years, I feel understood, heard, and vindicated." Within, Kody and Robyn stayed behind, the burden of reality weighing down, feelings festering just beneath the surface. For the first time, control was slipping from Kody's grasp. The judge signaled a recess, and the courtroom gradually emptied. Cameras snapped, whispers filled the corridors, and the sound of raw emotion still hung in the air. Christine hesitated on the courthouse steps, pausing to consider. She was no longer merely a subject of this trial. She was taking back her story, increment by increment, word by word.